All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Wisdom and Wealth. I'm here with somebody pretty awesome, special in my life, kind of a king of sports medicine, orthopedic killer, just done a ton of good things. And I personally I've had several knee surgeries and a tricep surgery. When I ended my career in Miami, this was the guy that took care of me, and so he's kind of a titan of that industry. Is officially retired now, but worked on Drew Brees, Michael Jordan, Roger Clemens, some like crazy names, only to build something really, really amazing. And we're actually sitting here in the Children's Hospital of Andrews Institute in Plano, Texas. But I'm super thankful to bring on Dr. James Andrews. Come on.
Uh, oh well, that you make me feel good anyway. Uh, I did retire, fortunately, at about with 2 lost college football games. One was the Auburn Bowl game 2 years ago. We played Maryland at 11 o'clock in the morning in the sleet, and they beat us. That's when our defensive players were all sitting on the bench, and I said, "What happened to our players?" They said they decided they didn't want to play. They're not making enough money. And then I was with Alabama, my other team. We were playing Michigan out in California for the playoff, and we got beat. So Nick Saban and I both retired the following Wednesday. That was the end of 23. So I've actually retired to go to work. Be honest with you, I'll tell you more about that later.
Okay. Okay. So, but you came out with Nick Saban when he was like, "This is the whole thing has changed."
Oh, he was he couldn't take it. He had, he normally will. With the last game was that weekend with Michigan, and normally about 3 days later, when they get back home, he'll have all the players come one at a time by his office to check out or whatever. And he had 30 of them come in. He told me, he said, we had 30 of them that came in, and they said, "Coach, I'll stay here if you give me more money. If not, I'm going to the portal." So he said to each one of them, "Well, don't let the door."
Hit you in the butt.
And anyway, he retired the next day. He said, "I can't take it anymore."
It's crazy.
And I don't know what we're going to do with all that.
Well, okay. Well, we might get into that a little more, but if you don't mind, I wanted to start this. I mean, it's easy. I love this when, we kind of talk about this. It's easy to look at where somebody's at today and dismiss anything that led up to that. And basically like see somebody at the top of a ladder or not see the steps that took to get them there. And so today, you have Andrews Institute here in Plano, Texas. You have Birmingham, one in Birmingham, Alabama, and one in Pensacola, Florida. I've had surgery in 2 of those places. And so, but it's pretty phenomenal to see what you've been, your family and your team have built up to this point. What if you don't mind, take me back to the very beginning of this thing when you started. Like, what led you to start this thing, and then what were some major difficulties at the beginning?
I would say that at the beginning, it was just blind luck, and love what I did, and worked hard. And that brings up another problem. I worked so hard that it hurt my young family. It took me a long time to get my priorities in order initially, but I was working 7 days a week and covering high school game on Friday night, working all week, seeing patients and operating, covering 2, sometimes 3 college games on Saturday, and covering the Washington Redskins on Sunday, and then back to work on Monday. I did that for 35 years.
Mm.
Actually, I worked for 50 years, and that's when I retired after 50 years here 2 years ago. But if people ask me all the time, "Well, how did all this happen?" And I don't know how to answer that, to be honest with you. People also ask me, if you had it to do all over again, what would you do different? And the thing that I would do different is that I would spend more time with my young kids.
Mm.
Obviously, I wasn't able to go to their soccer games, their basketball games, or their football games, or whatever. I made some of the football games, so that was about it. And the thing about that I finally learned as I got older, I decided, well, I'll spend more time with my older kids now, but that doesn't work.
Mm.
You never make it up if you don't spend time with them when they're real young. They don't like for me to say this, but they'll never forgive you for the neglect you had when they were young kids and didn't spend a lot of time with them. So I try to tell all of the trainees that train with me and young fellows to spend time with their young family. Don't neglect them during your training. It's easy to get caught up in your training, particularly if you love it and you're doing it 24 hours a day. And that's what I did. That's really what made me successful was that I worked hard.
Yeah.
But there was a price.
Yeah. Well, I want to come back to that. What, because honestly, that's the number one problem that are, as we talking about entrepreneurs, people building their businesses, how do they balance their family? And we'll come back to that. But what, if you don't mind, like, were there any moments along the way on the business side that were like major hockey stick moments? If you couldn't credit, was there like attributes or wisdom pieces where you're like, man, I couldn't have done it without these people, or major partnerships, or like how do you even start an Andrews Institute? Like, how does that even come or fathom into your head?
Well, let's go back to what you first hit it on. The big thing about looking back at what you've done is you need to honor your mentors. And if you're brushing your teeth in the morning and looking in the mirror and all you see is yourself, you're not going to be successful. What you should see is all the mentors that brought you along and made you who you are. And I was really fortunate. I had 3 super sports medicine mentors. The one was Dr. Jack Houston in Columbus, Georgia, and he was probably top 3 or 4 sports medicine doctors in the country when I came along. He was the team physician for Auburn, and I was able to spend the 3rd year of my residency from Tulane with him in Columbus, Georgia, a whole year with him, 101. And then when I finished my residency, Dr. Houston thought that I needed to do some upper extremity studies because we were beginning to take care of baseball players, and all he was interested in were football players and their knees. So he wanted me to learn about the shoulder and the elbow. So he sent me up to the University of Virginia, and I did a year with Dr. Frank McHugh, who was a team physician for Virginia. Along with him was Joe Geek, who was an athletic trainer and a physical therapist. And I learned that relationship from those two. And I learned a lot about how to take care of upper extremity problems. So that made that mentor really important to me. Then Dr. Houston jumped back in and said, you need to go to Europe and learn what they're doing in Europe with athletes because it's different. And I said, well, what should I do? He said, well, the number one knee surgeon in Europe takes care of all the athletes, the soccer players and everybody, is Professor Albert Triot in Lyon, France. So I went and spent a year with him, and all I did was follow in behind him every day, watching him operate for a year. He was the best technician surgically that I've ever witnessed. So I learned all that stuff they did in Europe that was a little different than what we did in the United States. The one thing I did learn, though, is that you can't treat patients in the United States and try to do the same way you treat people in Europe. It's a different mentality.
Okay.
So I took the best of what I learned there, but they were my 3 mentors, and they really made me and jump-started me in my career. And primarily it was Dr. Houston who pushed me along, and I skipped a lot of steps when I was young, and because of his notoriety and the fact that I rode his curtails in sports medicine. And I have to give credit back to particularly those 3, particularly Dr. Jack Houston. And from there, it was just one thing after another, and never saying no. I was a multitasker,
Yeah.
but it had a price to pay. Um, it took me a long time to get my priorities in order.
Yeah.
Fortunately, my wife Janelle helped me do that. You always give credit to your spouse, you know that, don't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So she's the cornerstone,
I,
and
I had to recently I was a guest on another podcast and they asked me who my Rushmore people were, and Mount Rushmore, top 4 people. And I had to say my wife was one of them because there's nobody that can challenge you or speak into you like your wife can. And so,
well, that's Janelle.
yeah.
So she helped me get my priorities in order, and I had them all backwards to begin with, and finally it took me some time, more than a few years, and finally I figured out that my number one priority is my faith, and number two is my family, and then number three is my profession,
Mm.
and that helped me get through the latter part of my life, and that really helped me become more successful.
Yeah. To, if you don't mind, give me an example, like what, like in a day, I guess shifting to that was a learning curve, right? So like when that happened, when your priorities started getting in order, what was an example of I'm walking through daily life, I'm trying to do well in the business. Say this is early you're trying to build and do something awesome, whatever this looks like. But is that Janelle calling you at the end of the day, say, "Hey, get your butt home," or what was going on?
Uh, I think she just made me want to come home
Mm.
because we had such a good home life. We had, uh, so I got to where I could handle my time better. So that I got my work done and was able to prioritize what I really did and put coming home at night or for the weekend. The problem is, as a team physician, the NFL plays at noon on Sunday, and I had to fly to Washington D.C. Sunday morning. And so what did that do? That took out church
Yeah.
for 7 months. When I retired from the Washington Redskins at the same time 2 years ago, first thing I told my wife is, we're going to start going to church regular because I've been for football season. It was impossible.
Mm.
So the first thing we did was we established a church that we go to in Pensacola, and we're also up in Birmingham. We established a church up there that we used to go to, and so we've been regular church members here since I retired, and that's real important. But it's a problem when you're taking care of football teams and whatever.
Yeah. How did that change your mind frame? Obviously your priorities, but did it change your mind frame at work too? Into shifting? Would you call that like a hockey stick moment for your career at the same time? Or how would you attribute that? Or how did that control it or influence
I
it?
tried to get my practice under control instead of taking on all comers. I've developed a bunch of young people around me that did fellowships with me,
Mm.
and I brought them into the practice with me in the various places where I worked, and I fed them like Dr. Houston fed me, and so that allowed me to uh, we say that allowed me to cherry pick. That's not a good term in medicine, but that's sort of what we did when I controlled what I was seeing and what I did and made it more reasonable rather than operate until midnight. I cut my work hours back. The thing that really got me to understand that was I had a heart attack about 25 years ago.
Mm.
And that got my attention. And that's when I said, hey, you better get control of your life.
You
Yeah, I
th-
got through that, but I had open heart surgery and
mm.
still going strong. But I said, you better change your work habits.
So how did you do that? What was the first thing you implemented right away?
I quit drinking.
That's a
I
good
had
one.
no alcohol.
Yeah.
I decided, hey, all the bad decisions I made, staying out late or whatever, was from drinking. And so I just quit just like that.
Mm.
That's been almost 30 years ago. And don't miss it either.
Yeah. That's it. There's actually huge downward trend in alcohol sales right now, especially in younger
Good, good,
generations. People
good.
are dropping it.
Now that's news to me, but I wouldn't expect that. But that's good.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a common theme, and we've seen it in our own lives where we haven't given it up altogether, but we flirted with the idea just because it hasn't been something that's just really filled. We wanted to fill with other things, church, our family, our business. Didn't want it to affect the next day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one for a lot of people.
Well, it's something you need to talk about,
Yeah,
and I'm proud that I was able to. I made my own decision. My wife probably had a little bit to do with it, but I just decided that was it.
yeah.
And I can't stand to go to cocktail parties. By the way,
We got a party to go to.
that's a waste of time.
So did you see a distinct turn in the way people viewed you or your staff or people around you
Yeah, I think
after that?
I was more rested.
Mm,
I was more patient, and I was more caring. And those are very important aspects of being a physician.
yeah.
Uh, I wasn't. I didn't let things aggravate me like I was doing early on in my life when I was overworking. I'm not sure though I'd be where I am today if I hadn't overworked that first part of my life. So it's not all bad.
Yeah. No, I guess the things that I see a lot is the further that I get in my own journey in this is when I'm thankful from what football gave me, which is a great launching point. But it was funny because we've had this times my wife and I we're watching playoffs or something, and we're seeing a guy who's 40 who's still playing ball,
Oh, you never want to give up.
and I'm like, and we both look at it, and I'm like, I don't miss it, and I
And
and I hate to say that, but I love coaching, right? And that's where God kind of brought me now was I'm like I got a team under me now where I'm like we can coach, we can pour just like you're talking about. You other mentors poured into you. I got people I can pour into, and seeing them win. In fact, this week we had an awesome one where where we put together a plan for a client, and I had maybe a hour's worth of input on what I would do on this, and
what are you coaching?
well, this is in our wealth management firm.
Uh-huh.
So we do financial planning and asset
really?
protection. Yeah.
I need your help.
And that's all right. Well, but it was awesome. It was so cool to me because my mentors, big one of mine is Erin Botsford, and she ended up selling her business like 17 or 18. And she wanted to build something awesome that she could give to her son, but he didn't want to take it over, but she wanted something that ultimately was valuable enough to sell if she chose to do that. And so that's what she ended up doing. And lucky for me, I got introduced to her because I wanted I wanted to talk to whoever was 30 years ahead of me. And just because I knew this was a more of a biblical, an abundance of counselors, there's safety. And if I knew that I can go talk to somebody who has way more experience and time than I did in any given field, that I was going to get some piece of gold out of that conversation.
Yeah.
And so selfishly, that's part of why the podcast was born. But when I got introduced to her, my business, one, I could 10x under my own power. That's the hard work, right? And I still come back to the laborers are few, where there's lazy people, people that don't want to go apply themselves, whatever. There's always going to be plenty of those. But the few that do want to go work, and this is kind of the athlete side of me where I couldn't stand anybody who was lazy, you wanted to give everything you got to those people. And that's what she gave to me. And ultimately she saw me apply those teachings to the business and have big wins. And so she gave me more of her time, more and more of her time, because she saw that I was actually using it. And so she's seen the team grow. And in the same way, I've learned my lesson and who to select and who to hire and who not to hire. But the people that have really grabbed onto it, they take it and run, and they're thankful to you for it. But it's just been a really powerful thing to me to just take that wisdom and go run with it. But I appreciate the mentor comment big time.
Yeah. Let me say one other thing. We're talking about what made you successful and how did it all happen. There's nothing wrong with working harder, outwork everybody else,
Mm.
but there's a price to pay for that, and there's got to be some modifications to that. You got to be smart enough to understand that. But the real thing, though, is the hardest thing about being successful is maintaining success.
Mm.
As you get to the top of your ladder in whatever field, if you're not careful, you'll fall off and you go backwards. And there are plenty of examples of that in all areas of professional life. Look at some of our best athletes. That's happened to them.
Yeah.
Some of our politicians, some of our business leaders. I've got doctors that are friends of mine, peers of mine, that didn't pay attention to what they were doing at the top of the ladder and went bankrupt.
Mm. It's
And that you so it, the hardest thing is maintaining your success once you're at that pinnacle.
Yeah. Now, the first thing, tell me if this is on where you're going or on point with what you're thinking, or not. We got some friends, country music people, and talking. One person manages another person, but they're talking about they took over one artist and the books were completely screwed up, and they found people stealing money and doing all the things, and they almost went bankrupt because of that situation, and was basically taking home nothing. And so then they were able to get in there and help clean it up and make it profitable again for them. But I mean, is that something you're talking about? It's like, hey, when you've gotten the reins, making sure you got checkpoints that you're managing the books or managing those pieces, or are you thinking of something else?
But the books is one part of it, but it's not necessarily the financial part. It's the mentation part of doing a good job, maintaining a high level of taking care of patients. It's easy to get lazy and not take good care of your patients, and all of a sudden you don't have any patients.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, maintaining your success. The one of the worst sins in the world is boredom. And unfortunately, it's easy in medicine to become bored with what you do,
Mm.
because you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's a good thing about sports medicine, because you're never bored in sports medicine, believe me. Uh, and and so we don't have that problem. When I retired, I knew I couldn't just do nothing, and I'd be bored. I'd lose my health, and so I started a company called Andrews Medicine, and we're building Andrews Institutes around the country, like this right here. We have 15 projects going on right now for different health systems. One with the New Orleans Saints, one with the Penn State, to build a facility like this. So I retired to go to work, but I'm not working every day. But and the other thing is, if your work should be fun, it should be something you enjoy.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing, and I'm really stimulated now, maybe more than I was stimulated in the last year of my orthopedic practice. because I don't know if you understand or not why I decided to retire. That's a good question. I was sitting around doing something, thinking about my career, and I said, "How long have I been doing this?" And I figured it out up, and it was 50 years. And I said, "You know what? It's time for me to retire." So I called all my doctors and administrators in the next day and told them that I was retired in a year, just off of that.
You have a big gasp in the room. Like,
Well, I wanted them to know,
yeah.
and I also told them what I wanted them to how I wanted them to take my place.
Mm.
Um, so that's how I handled it, spontaneously.
Was kind
But
of,
it was time.
yeah,
What you don't want to do in retirement is to have somebody else tell you that it's time for you to retire.
I understand that. I under, I tell you that sounds similar to when, and you know this story all too well, right? The NFL tells you when you're done, but it doesn't even tell you. They just they stop talking to you. Basically, is what it is, like a bad girlfriend or something. But I remember we were after all my surgeries. We were training. We were actually living in New Jersey at the time, trying to come back, and we were there. I think a year, a little over a year. And I remember a time looking at my wife and I got sick of just waiting on somebody else to dictate what was going on. And I'm like, I remember telling her at some point, we gotta make a choice for ourselves and make a move. And that's when,
You got to have a post retirement plan too, didn't you?
yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't. And
It sounded like you were pretty lucky though,
real lucky.
and nothing wrong with being lucky.
Yeah.
You make your own luck.
Yeah.
It
Well,
doesn't just happen.
you work hard and
You make it.
all of a sudden you're pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Well, that's what, work hard, attract a good wife. Come on. I'll take that. And ultimately I think that's what became same thing, same qualities that coaches liked me for. They liked the guys that showed up on time, that worked hard, that was reliable. And ultimately those are what my mentors appreciated. They're like, you were going to be there. You said you were going to be there. You
You
showed
have to
up.
be like that if you're an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's been really cool to see that applied post ball into the new field. And so it's been really neat. We'll talk about that. So what's the point of the Andrews Institutes? What's the big vision on that one?
Well, it started off, I've had a fellowship program where I train orthopedic surgeons that have finished their formal training, and they come to me and work with me for a whole year, like I did with Dr. Houston in sports medicine. After they finished they could be in practice somewhere, but to do sports medicine, they got to take a fellowship. And I have some 650 plus fellows that I've trained since 1974 that are scattered all over the United States, high school, colleges, pro, everywhere. And a lot of them don't have the facilities that we trained them in, and they're hurting because they don't have what you see here. So when I decided to try to build some Andrews Institutes, what I was really trying to do was to build that an institute and for some of my former fellows that were in need of facilities to stimulate them. And I could build a facility. I had the fellows already trained, so I had a ready workload of people that would want to come, like we have here, that had moved here, that were all trained with me somewhere along the way, that are working here at this institute right now. So that was the purpose of me trying to get involved with building Andrews Institutes around the country. And as it turned out, some of them were former fellows of mine, and some of them were just orthopedic surgeons that I knew that would come to me and said, "How about helping us develop an Andrews way and build us an Andrews Institute and brand it for us?" And so it's worked. kept me stimulated too, kept me busy.
Yeah. Well, is that now that's kind of almost like a franchise model type thing.
Yeah,
Not that I want to demean it or at all, and
yeah.
I don't feel like I'm doing that, um, but in a way, like you became such a mentor to other people that they're like, I want to let's bring that same thing to hometown.
Well, without bragging about it, what I'm trying to do is teach them the Andrews way,
Yeah.
and we have a certain code of ethics that we follow to be able to use the branding of Andrews. And we the doctors that want to follow that we take, but if they don't, then they need to go somewhere else. Keep it at a high quality. The problem is the more facilities you develop, the harder it is to keep that brand where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's why I'm visiting different ones all the time, flying back and forth. We've been very successful here, by the way.
Well, talk about that for a second. So that's interesting. I was actually reading a buddy of mine wrote a book, and he talked about this. It was like your values, essentially, that everybody wants to create a good culture, but your values are more discovered rather than just created out of thin air. And a part of it makes sense to me because you learn by getting burned a little bit or by making bad choices. I got to learn on purpose or on accident. One hurts, right? So,
I think my explanation for me personally is that very little that I have done was original with me. I learned from all my mentors and other people. I've learned it from, I guess you call it plagiarism, but very little have I, when I talk about the Andrews way, uh, that was actually something I created and wrote down. As a matter of fact, what we have Andrew's patient philosophy, which are 10 things that guide us in taking care of patients. You know where I got that? One of my former fellows, this is about 25, 30 years ago, he finished his fellowship with me. He was from Long Island, believe it or not. And I called him Yankee Joe. And when he got through his fellowship, he sent me a plaque with the Andrews patient philosophy and the 10, 11, 12 things on it. And he said, "This is what I learned from you during my year with you." And that's where we got that's where we got that. That's where
really.
that came from. Uh, that's where this came from. Take a look at that. That's our credo, our mission statement.
Oh, come on.
Now that's in our pocket. It's supposed to be every time we come here, you're supposed to have that in your pocket. I've got that in Pensacola. I've got it in Birmingham.
You know, I got to take this, right? I'm not
Let,
going to
let me
steal
let
it
me
from you, but I'm going
let
to
me
take a
just show
picture.
let me just show you something. You know where I got this? This will back up what I just told you. I was out here in Dallas with my wife Janelle, and I was giving a talk at an orthopedic meeting out here, and we were staying at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel downtown. And we went in to check in, and the gentleman checking us in had a coat tie on, was all dressed up, was so polite. And I asked him, I said, and we had seen this all over the place in Ritz-Carlton hotels. And the guy that started the Ritz-Carlton hotels was a patient of mine. Bill Johnson was his name, from Atlanta. And so I said, let me ask you a question. How do y'all have such high standards and everything is the same in all of these Ritz-Carlton hotels, a standard of care and taking care of your clients? He reached in his pocket. He pulled something like this that said Ritz-Carlton Credo, standard of care, and said, "This is what we all go by."
Mm.
And I said, let me see that. I said, like you, I said, can I have that? So I went home and I changed the wording to match a sports medicine standard of care. So it wasn't, and now it's all over it's like it's mine, but it really came from the Ritz-Carlton
Yeah,
that day.
that's awesome. Thank you. No, I'm gonna take pictures so I don't have to take.
Oh, I've got a bunch of them. Take it.
So I've done this same thing with my mentors or the people that I look up to, and I'm like, I don't.
We got it on the back of this too.
Oh, it looks like
This goes on you. This
okay.
goes on.
See, I love this because it's, to me, I think so many times we get stuck in our head of like, I got to be so original, but this is me, I guess, from my sports background is I've never really, I'm like, cool, I want to develop something amazing, right? And be creative, but I've always been super coachable. Come on, you got another one here? You got them all kinds of versions.
See, that's Andrew. That's the one in Pensacola.
Okay.
They're very similar. Very similar.
Here you go. The Credo. Andrews Institute is a place where the genuine care and outcomes of patients are our highest mission. I'm going to finish this. We pledge to offer the highest level of expertise, quality, and innovation available to our patients, who will always be treated with the utmost compassionate care and patient-centered treatments. The Andrews Institute experience provides unrivaled access to the latest technologies for care within a compassionate, high-performance environment for a dynamic return to activity.
Let me read to you what I was talking about, Yankee Joe.
Uh-huh.
It's called the Andrews Way, or Andrews Patient Philosophy. Let me read that to you. Here's our patient philosophy. The patient is always right. Now, you weren't always right, but I'll let you forget it. Make sure the patient feels he or she has been treated properly by previous physicians or medical providers. Do not say anything bad about another physician, and as far as that is concerned, another person. My mother taught me a long time ago when I was a little kid. She said, Jimmy Rubin, you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything. And that stuck with me my whole life. Always be open-minded. As you get older, and I'm sitting here talking to you about all this, it's easy to have a closed mind.
Yeah.
And if you have a closed mind, you're going backwards. As you get older, you think you know everything, and all you're doing is just spinning around. So you got to have an open mind and accept new ideas. We had a lecture here last night. We have on Thursday night. I come out here. We had one of my former fellows that was with me from New York City 25 years ago, and he came lecture to us about rotator cuff injuries. He had a bunch of new ideas, new techniques, and I was more than open about listening to him because that's how you learn. I learned from Dr. Houston a long time ago. When you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you're next to you know what.
No, no.
Okay? Okay, here's the rest of it. Listen to the patient. Here's a quiz for you. How long does it take an orthopedic surgeon who's got a new patient a new patient that's seeing him in the examining room, and you go in, sit down, and you ask the orthopedic surgeon, ask the patient, well, what's wrong with you? Tell me what happened to you. And how long does it take the orthopedic surgeon to interrupt the patient? And he starts talking and takes over the whole conversation.
Yeah.
This is a scientific paper that was presented, by the way. How long does it take him to interrupt and start taking over the conversation and not listening to the patient?
I'm gonna guess.
Yeah.
10 seconds.
17 seconds. That happens all the time. You have to sit down, prop your feet up, relax, and listen to them. And if you do that, it's hard to do. Like I'm dominating this discussion right now. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
But you have to make yourself do it. All right, here's the next thing. Do not be the first person to make the big statement. That means, let's say the big statement would be, you see that football player right there? He's never going to make it.
Mm.
That's a big statement.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
Attitude, responsibility, knowledge, desire, availability are always necessary to be successful. One must always be able to read the patient. In this new electronic world, you got to read patients real quick.
Yeah.
As a physician, you must be confident with your diagnosis and surgical skill. Your confidence is reflected and perceived back by the patient. Athletes are very smart, by the way. If you wasn't smart, you wouldn't be an NFL football player. And if you're in sports medicine and you don't think that an athlete can read you, they can read you quicker than you can read them.
Hmm.
If you act like you don't know what you're talking about, they're out the back door finding somebody else.
Yeah.
By the way,
Thank you.
you talk about football and what it did for you. Well, the other reason that I was successful in sports medicine was that I grew up in an athletic family. My father played football in Northwestern State University over in Louisiana.
We didn't beat them at Montana.
You did?
But we did. I'm not going to brag or anything, but
wait a minute. I'll tell you a story about Montana. Okay, I got a good one for you. So he was an offensive. He played both ways. He was a big guy. He's as big as you are. And so when I grew up, and I was involved in all kinds of sports, football, everything, and I really got good in pole vaulting. And I still have some state records in Louisiana from pole vaulting. And I got a full scholarship to LSU, track and field. And I was on a football team that was called the Homer Ironmen. Only had 18 players on the team, and we beat everybody. And we had 6 guys off that team that wound up playing for LSU. 2 of them were high school All-Americans. Remember a guy named Fred Miller, played offensive tackle for the Baltimore team?
Vaguely.
He was an All-American from LSU. He was on our high school team. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I went to LSU, and I used athletics to pole vault me into medical school. And athletics teaches you a certain quality of never giving up, work hard. And when I pick fellows in our fellowship program, if they're former athletes, they have an edge. Anyway, I went to medical school at LSU down in New Orleans. Is where the medical school was. In those days, if you were LSU athlete and you got into a professional school, they paid your way not only through undergraduate, but they paid my way all the way through medical school. So I used athletics to get my education without spending any money.
Perfect.
So athletics was why I wanted to be a team physician. We didn't have that. We didn't know what sports medicine, that word wasn't even developed.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a team physician. when I grew up in little Homer, Louisiana, next door to me was our family practitioner, Dr. Gladney, and he was our team doctor for the football at school. And I wanted to be like Dr. Gladney. So I used athletics all the way through to get me into sports medicine. It also helped me be able to talk to athletes and talk their language and understand their psychology. And that really helped me be successful from a personal standpoint.
Yeah. It's huge. Communication ends up being a massive piece. That was something that was big with us coming up. Was I'm like, whether you could pick out whether you could trust somebody or you feel like you can trust somebody real fast. And so it's that's big to me.
What were you asking me a while ago?
Which part?
Just a while ago, I said we'll come back to that. So.
Oh, I was telling you the Montana beat North State.
You want me to tell you my Montana story?
Yeah, that's one you hadn't eaten for like 3 days straight. Or something.
You knew that?
You told me not too long, a while back or years ago. But
were you on that football team?
I don't.
We played Troy.
No, you got to tell that you share the story real quick though, because we got to go. I'm just go Grizz. That's my thing. So, but you came to Montana.
Well, we were playing y'all in the semifinals of the Division II. I think it was Division II national championship. It was a semifinal game, and we had to go to Montana to play y'all in the snow from Troy, Alabama. And they kept asking me, was I coming to the game? And hell, I was working all day Friday. The game was Saturday at noon. So I got on a commercial flight, Delta, in Birmingham, and flew to Atlanta to Salt Lake, and then to Montana or something. I got there just as all the fast food stores closed that night. And I had nothing to eat. So the trainer picked me up, and we go to the hotel where the team was staying, and I slept through breakfast.
Oh, geez.
So I didn't get any breakfast. Then we were loading the bus up to go to the game, and they had a snowbank in the stadium around the field about 6 feet tall. I remember they had that up on the bank up there. They had a big sign or something.
So, the M on the side.
Yeah, the M.
The Mount Sentinel there, yeah.
Anyway, we started the game off, and it was they had the field covered the whole week with a tarp so it wouldn't thaw out. And our kids had never seen snow, including me. We were slipping and sliding all over the place, and we scored first. And we tried to kick an extra point, and they dropped it, so it was 6-0. I said, "Man, we're gonna beat this bunch." You know what the final score was?
Don't make the first grand statement. Come on, what's the credo? What's the final score?
70-something to 6. I'd never been with a team that got beat like that.
Really?
And so I hadn't had anything to eat yet. So I go up in the stands. I had a Troy hat on, and they started throwing snowballs at me. And I get up there I would get a hot dog up in the concession stand, and I stood in line, and I got up there to get mine. He slams the thing and closes it up. So I didn't get anything to eat. He said, "There's one on the other side of the stadium." So I go over there, and it's closed. So then we all our players were just distraught. That team they only lost one game in 4 years, and y'all beat us that bad. So we go to the airport to come home, and our Delta flight, the plane was supposed to pick us up. Something wrong with it, couldn't come in. So they bring another plane in 2 or 3 hours later, and of course they didn't have any food on it. We got back to Montgomery about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I still hadn't.
Dying, just living off nothing at that point.
But besides getting beat so bad. So that was my trip to Montana. Shame on you.
I'm happy to be a part of it. Part of that story. That's great. I'm okay with that. Well, look, hey, this has been amazing. Doc, this is incredible. I got to tell you,
I don't like to lose, by the way.
no, I hate losing. I can't stand it. It sits on me too bad.
That's why we've been successful.
Yeah. Well, it's if you're fine, if you're comfortable with
The athletic part of our lives made us successful.
Yeah. It's awesome. Well, I gotta share this, and I'm gonna ask you one more question before we close out. So
the next question, you got to pay for it.
You got no problem. Okay. I love seeing this credo because I've seen it lived out from you and from your staff, Pat. I think it was Mary Grace,
Mary Jane,
excuse me, Chad, Butch, like everybody who was
Jeremy.
Jeremy. Yes. I remember Jeremy.
Jeremy's still working for me.
Well, everybody had a piece of the process and contributed. And I'll tell you the biggest.
Those people have been with me my entire career. Really? We didn't change.
See, that's an indicator, right? Not a lot of people are in one spot for a long time.
I'm telling you.
Well, I'll tell you what.
The problem is that when I retired, they had to retire.
Yes. Well, so a really cool thing that I always thought was neat was, when I got hurt, saw you, my wife came with me. And I remember you coming, we were in Birmingham, and you coming in with your fellows behind you and you'd scan the room. So a lot of times, the athlete or the guy is the one who got all the attention, and naturally he's got the injury or whatever. But you'd scan the room, and I remember you seeing me, and you kind of scanned the room. You saw Megan sit there, and you totally just blew me off and went to Megan first to say hi.
Your mother, and your wife isn't happy. Nobody's happy.
Well, so that was why she wanted to come today. She wanted to come see you and say hi, and because you left such an imprint on her, and
she was more important than you. I hate to tell you that.
I know, I know that now, right? But there were times where you had, I'll tell you, even you had called me on a Sunday, and I know you've done this with other guys, but like you called me on a Sunday coming out of church. I had an infection in my knee, and we're going through that mess. And you said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I was praying for you." And I wasn't necessarily at a place where I had found my faith yet. And when I had came to faith, that was a moment that God had brought back up to me of like, hey, I put people in your life on purpose to keep you coming to this moment. So seeing this is really cool for me, even though it was taken from the Ritz, right? I am a fan of that. But it's neat because I see you live it out. I see your people live it out. And
see, I had it in my pocket.
Yeah.
I had this one because I was out here. The red ones for here, I had it. I brought it with me from home because I knew I was coming out here yesterday and today. But this is for the one in Birmingham, in Pensacola.
It's awesome. I love it. I said to see you live it out is the best thing, and to see you have it in your pocket is even cooler to me. I love it. Well, last question here, and then we'll wrap it up. And I hate to wrap it up because I could sit here and talk a long time with you. Well, give me something like it was a funny story, or like this could be an orthopedist coming up, or this could be somebody just building a business, building their life. And you've given some amazing things already up to this point. But if you could dial it back or give them one piece of wisdom to imprint or leave on them exiting this podcast, what would you tell somebody who's just rip roaring excited and has that same mentality?
I keep it pretty simple. If you love what you do and you do what you love, you will be successful. That's it.
Yeah.
We love athletics. That's why we both were successful in everything we've done.
Yeah.
If you don't love what you do and enjoy what you're doing, you better do something different.
Pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. Hey, Doc, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been amazing. You're incredible. I wish I got to meet Janelle one day, because I know you can't be you without an awesome wife. So tell her thank you so much for being that.
I usually finish up with my when I forgot to tell you this. what I did when I realized that I was not spending enough time with my family, I started taking my family with me to to all these football games that I was covering. And when I first met Janelle, she didn't have didn't have any athletic background. I was covering the University of Kentucky back then. I was flying back and forth up there covering their football and basketball teams, and they had the Final Four there at Rump Arena. They had me come up because to be the tournament medical doctor, and they had Janelle and I sitting right in the middle of the floor of the side of the floor right there. And of course, I couldn't sit there. I was running all over the place, and she was sitting there. And I came back to sit down after the game, first game had started. She looked at me. She said, "What does this mean?" Don't tell her I told you. She had she had no idea. And now she's an expert.
Yeah, I bet.
She knows more about football than I do. And we played Auburn. We played a football game at Auburn. She's up in our box up there watching, and I bring all the kids to all the games. I bring them to the Redskins. So we traveled together, became a family situation. Otherwise, I would never see them. That's one way I got around my problem. But she's up there in the box, and I'm down on the sidelines with the team, and my phone rings, and she says, "Tell that coach to quit running up the middle." We could, or some kind of advice. Want me to go tell the head coach? That's how she's into athletics. The other thing, though, that I was going to tell you, and we'll finish with that, but I'm often asked about the best advice that I've ever received for my career. And it comes from my wife, Janelle. And the reason I emphasize that is that you need to give honor to your spouse. And usually she's sitting in the back of the room when I'm giving these talks, and I finish up with this little saying, and I give her credit, and it gives me out of the doghouse for about another week or so. But anyway, I said, when she says, "If you're still talking about what you did yesterday, you're not doing much today." I get that every night when I come home with the big head from some kind of award and she'll throw that at me. So it settles you back down. But that's the best advice I've ever received in my career.
Hey, this is awesome. You are awesome. I'm so thankful.
Oh, no.